1932, Australia came out of World War One. Imagine these guys, all the soldiers coming back home. They have defeated a big enemy. No one have ever seen that kind of enemy. They just came out of that war. Coming home, another enemy is awaiting for them. Already, they have not settled down. To settle down, they have to work hard in the form of farming and growing the fields to have food again. But another enemy is still waiting already for them. Imagine finishing a war, going home to another war, and an unexpected enemy. What's the enemy? Emus. Obviously, you were not expecting, and they were not expecting at all. At all. Imagine if I tell you that they had to call the army for a full-fledged fighting mission with these Emus. Let's see that what happened actually, what led to that huge war with Emus in Australia. And eventually they lost. Who? Not Emus. The army lost to Emus and they accepted it publicly. The farmers tried everything when they came home, so these emus running around their fields, messing up their field. What can they do? When you see a bird, what will you do? You try scarecrowing, shouting, throwing things at them, maximum shooting them. That's what you will do. What else can you do there? And especially, what else can you not do? You will do every bloody thing to scare them away or get rid of them because they are ruining your life. They are the ones messing up with your food. That's the only thing after World War One. Imagine finishing a war, coming home, seeing these emus in your food. What else you will do? The last resort they had was to call the help from the army because why they had to call the army? Because they were going into with the army into the world war to help the army, and when they're coming back from the war they have nothing left, so they have to call the army because they stood by the army. Then army had to intervene for what? For the emus. The emus were the biggest enemies at that time. 1932 war of emus, and that is the actual war that happened. Now the plan, the army said that okay, we are the army, we have generals, we have ammunitions, we just came out of world war, what else can go wrong? These birds, there comes Mr. very famous General GPW Meredith with his troops. Obviously he was arrogant at that time, must have been. If I place myself in front of that, in that place, I'll be feeling like what the hell I'm going to do there? These farmers, they can't handle few crows or few birds. Let's shoot them down. As an army person, think with the mentality of army person. The general comes in with 10,000 rounds of ammunition. Imagine the strength they're bringing in, 10,000 rounds of ammunition for birds, to kill the birds. What is the plan? To kill them. Nothing else. Just shoot at them. A normal person, as a normal person, that should be the mentality, not even of a normal person nowadays. Imagine a general coming in with a funny face and his lieutenants, army, and 10,000 round of ammunition without any plans. The plan is to shoot them. That's not the plan. But eventually, we had to face the history with these kind of ammunition and non-planning events. So, what happens next? We already know what happens. They had to face the defeat. Who? Our beautiful General Meredith. The next step, what were they doing? They came in all with the ammunition. They had trucks full of ammunition, machine guns, rifles, and bullets. 10,000 rounds of bullets. What was the plan? No plan. So, what they did, just like a normal person, they had their army sitting inside the trucks, running after the birds. And they were thinking these are some ordinary birds because they just came out of the war. So, they were not taking account of these birds as something special. They said, okay, just kill them. What's going to happen next? They were running and chasing the birds after them inside a truck or many trucks. They were just shooting them continuously What was happening? Killing some of the birds and most of them running in a very coordinated way. They were just swishing down the bullets, like dodging the bullets, like in Matrix. Imagine that scene and seeing the face of, imagine the face of the soldiers at that time. Not an ordinary person or ordinary farmer shooting down a bird and looking at his face. No, imagine the face of the soldiers at that time. The birds are dodging their bullets. The birds, just like in Matrix. Imagine the effect on their morale at that time. Imagine the situation they will be thinking, that where have we come down to? What is the situation we are facing right now? We haven't seen this kind of enemy in the world war even. What are we facing in form of a bird? Emus? Imagine the frustration, the downfall of morale in their faces at that time. Imagine that. So what was happening when the army came in with our very competent general in Australia? They came in with 10,000 rounds. But they were just thinking that there are few of the emos or few thousand of the emos. We will kill some of them, just like an army person does. Then mostly. So they did not even realize the terrain, the areas, what kind of enemy they are facing. They just thought that it's a bird, and we will be just smashing them because we've been victorious all over the world, and no one has defeated us. But here was the first time in history where Australians were defeated directly on the face, on their grounds. Imagine the enemy penetrating your own ground, calling you, do something if you can. What do? Retreat. They had machine guns, 10,000 rounds, men. They were trained killers, mean soldiers. So, still they couldn't do nothing shit about these emos. Why? Because what was happening, as soon as they were about to reach them or they were trying to shoot at them, they were running into small groups. They were so good at maneuvering and organizing themselves into leadership groups. That's the trait they had, and they were not aware of that. They were just thinking about them as random, illogical birds. What they were doing is, as soon as they see the attack or someone coming approaching them in a fatal way, any bullet dodging them or coming towards them, they were arranging them into small groups. One of the emo will be leading them, and then they will not be running in that direction of the leader. They will be running in a zigzag manner. That was something of astonishment for the soldiers and for the general. What happens when you face an unexpected maneuver from an enemy? You die. Just because they were not retaliating, I believe that's the only reason the soldiers were alive at that day. Because they didn't had guns, they didn't had anything to attack. All they were doing is just saving themselves by running in a maneuver way that is instinct to them. They had feathers that can dodge bullets. Can you imagine the strength of their feather? The silkiness of their feather was so amazing that sometimes a bullet would not even penetrate that. They will just slip off them, giving a small damage to them. Imagine the frustration on the face of the soldiers at that time. Imagine how pessimist they would have become, how angry, how distasteful of the situation they would have. Imagine going back into 1930s, coming out of the war. On your own land, the enemy is there, and you are thinking that we have won the war. What else can go wrong on our own ground by few birds? Imagine the psychological state of the soldiers, not of the farmers. Farmers were already facing that, and they called the army that, okay, who else is going to be the big guns? But that's where you realize this is the lesson you have to learn, that when nature is against you, no one can win. You have to learn the lesson that the nature is the most powerful and deliberate force that can hit you from somewhere that you can't even imagine. You can never be prepared for that. Always you will prepare yourself for some certain things, and the next thing will be there. Even till today, you cannot survive, or you cannot compare yourself or make yourself like in a savior situation against a rain, a simple rain that has been the formula of the life since the beginning. Since the beginning, we were there. If rain starts right now, it stays there for 10 days. What you going to do? You all going to be doomed. That is why don't ever think going against the nature. You can only take precautions. So, what they would have done, imagine what the people from Australia would have done. They were facing an enemy inside their own land from the nature where they are accustomed of living, where they have to survive. Eventually, when they were finished with 2,500 rounds, they were disheartened. They went back. They retreated because they started attacking emus on machine guns also, not only regular guns. They put the guns on the trucks, and they were running inside the truck. Inside, they were sitting in the truck following the running emus. Still they couldn't hit them. Why? Because they did not take into account the level of grounds, the ground, because it was a farming ground, so it was uneven, so they cannot aim at the emus properly. Even they were so distrusted, disregarded, disgusted of the situation. Their morale was gone. They had to retreat. They had to go back to the headquarters that we cannot face this enemy. Eventually, the only solution was there is no solution. They had to leave the farmers out to their personal precautions, giving the things that they have to make the fences, boundaries to keep them away, and the old methods again. What does that show you? If you can tell me, what would you do in that situation? If you can guide me in the comment, what would you, not thinking in the mindset of that's the thing that you don't have to think in the mindset of a today's person or today's technology. No. Imagine people at that time when there was no technology, nothing of great strategies at that time, considering those downfalls. What will you do in that situation in that time? So they had to retreat. Still, there is a wall there, wall for emu, to stop them in Australia in memory of War of Emo. This is the biggest and the worst war they have faced. And it is a funny thing, but it is the reality they have faced. So imagine people facing that war. Not you, they were facing famine and drought. Their their whole villages were just disrupted, and the food was gone. They are facing, they had to call out army. Do you think that army will be coming down on the roads of Australia, UK, England for these small things? Imagine at that time how big it was. The army had to come in terms of operation, military operation. And now what they have to do? They have to retreat. They have to retreat within their own land. Can you imagine army retreating within their own land? You have not heard anything like that in history. You have not, I haven't heard anything. Your own army retreating in your own land, not a regular force army. So what they had to do is they had to pass a regulation. They were even putting bounties that whoever removes, they will be getting the emus, certain number of emus, they will be getting certain kind of rewards. So these kind of cheap tactics they had to come out with in terms of being a government. Imagine that. So farmers were left to deal with their situation. They had to deal with that. They couldn't do anything. The lesson is nature is the most powerful thing that you can come across with. You cannot defy nature. It can be in form of anything. Even a small bird can defy the whole army. Hopefully you have learned the lesson behind this funny story, but never go against nature. You can be prepared, but never go against. Always be prepared. Thank you very much. Subscribe, share. Thank you.